Hello to the young men and young women of anatomy. Welcome to your Unit 4, the skeletal system notes. You'll want to follow along with your notes sheet, the student notes or whatever, the slides, and fill in the blanks as we go. Of course, we'll have some extra discussion with all that you may be really interested in listening to that might be helpful down the road. You know, and I got to looking at this past unit. I know some people didn't fill in their slides and things like that. And all I could think was, man, I bet they're not going to do good on their exam. And guess what? They didn't. So if you're one of those people, I would definitely fill it in. I know what some of you think is, I'll just go back and watch these videos. How annoying would it have to be to watch, I don't know, 4 or 5 of these over and over again just to find one point for, like, say, a study guide? So it's much better for you, in interest of time, energy, effort, all that good stuff, to just simply fill in as we go through these videos. You watch it one time, then you got the slides completed, then you have it all in one place to, use for whatever purposes, from quizzes to little diagram, exam type things, test things to, eventually the unit exam. So certainly fill these in. It is Halloween season. Woo! Scary, spooky. Anyway, one of the thing that's become tied with Halloween, I guess you could say, imagery, is a skeleton. So what better time to go over the skeletal system than Halloween season or spooky season, as apparently they call it now, as my kids have told me. So the spooky season, skeletal system is perfect for that. Hopefully you know a little bit about the skeletal system. You've heard about bones, and a few of their names, and kind of what they do and things like that. We're going to look a lot more in depth at bones and the different types of bones. We'll learn a lot of different things about the types and the structure of bones, the different parts of it, about joints, the different types of joints that bones come together and connect at. So we'll learn a lot in here. Let's get ready to go. Get your slides ready. There's 206 bones in the body, and we're going to learn them all. No, not necessarily. Only about 30 or so, the key bones. But there are 206 total in the human body, average human body. Of course, if you were, say, missing an arm, you would be fewer than 206, things like that. So bones are the organs of the skeletal system. All right, so a bone is an organ. It is made up of multiple tissues that work together to form this organ. Okay, so bones are the organ. Sorry, go back. A couple different functions. We'll go fly through these pretty quick. Of course, provide a framework for the body. It's what everything in the body ties to or is set within. It holds everything, together. It gives that framework. It also supports the body, helps us, be upright instead of just a blob of, different types of tissues and fluids laying on the floor. This keeps us, supported. Bones also provide a point of attachment for muscles. So when we think about muscles, as we'll learn with the muscular system, muscles are attached at bones. Okay, they're attached at different points to bones. That's what enables them to expand and contract or be able to move, as we'll see. So if we didn't have bones, muscles wouldn't have a purpose, actually. Again, here we go. We learned about these with tissues. Ligaments attach bone to bone. Tendons attach muscle to bone. Please know that. Please memorize that. Let it change your life. In 10 years, be a late 20s-year-old person that knows how to have a conversation and be able to call ligaments what they are and tendons what they are. Okay, so they're different structures, and it's all based around those ligaments that hold like structures together, bone to bone. Obviously, that's what we're really going to be talking about this unit. And then tendons, muscle to bone, we'll learn more about those later on. Bones also protect softer tissues. Think about how the ribs protect your heart and lungs. If somebody hits you in the chest, your lungs don't cave in right away, and your heart doesn't become wounded. Thank you to our ribs. Think about our skull protecting our brain. Like a skull protecting the brain. Brain sits inside there. It's obviously a softer tissue, more susceptible to injury. Skull protects it. Same thing with spinal cord and vertebrae. The vertebrae helps protect that very, very fragile spinal cord, which we'll learn more about that with the nervous system. So bones protect softer tissues. And bones provides a site for a process called hematopoiesis. 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 And that is blood cell formation. Your blood is made inside your bones. There it is. Your blood is made inside your bones. Not many people realize that and understand that. They are made inside the bone marrow, which we'll look at a little closer. That is where your blood comes from. As you can see in this diagram, the three primary parts of blood, or at least the formed parts of blood, along with just the liquid part of it, they all happen in bones, hematopoiesis. Another thing is bones store inorganic salts, calcium, potassium, phosphorus. This is what actually gives our bones a hardened structure, is these inorganic substances that make up the bone, where it's stored up. We're going to learn more about osteoporosis later on. It's a disease where the bones become brittle and weakened, typically in older females. That can be anybody. And you can see kind of the gaps that start to form. All that's really happening is they don't hold the calcium, potassium, and phosphorus like they do in normal, healthy bone. So it's a storage place for those. And they store these things because our body uses these substances in different processes. If we're not ingesting enough of, say calcium, then our bones are kind of broken down to give our body calcium. There's the whole common thing of drink your milk to make your bones strong. Yes and no. Our bones are pretty strong on their own as long as you're getting an intake of calcium in an amount that your body can use that calcium and doesn't have to go to this backup supply. It doesn't keep our bones strong in that sense. Milk is just a good source of calcium, so if we ingest it, our body's able to use the calcium from the milk for whatever we need, our cells and tissues need that calcium for without breaking down our bone. So our bone is normally strong and healthy and hardened like that, unless we don't get enough calcium. I think this is the last thing. Bones contain a passageway for blood vessels and nerves. Hopefully we're going to be able to go into the lab, most likely next week, and we'll get to see some, they're fake, but bones, different types of bone, and you'll see little holes and inlets and things like that inside the bone. Our blood vessels and our nerves flow all throughout our bones, kind of popping in and popping out at different places. That gives a very rigid structure for these blood vessels and the nerves that could easily be, flattened or, crinkled up or intertwined or something like that. It keeps them on a straight passageway that enables, blood to carry all throughout our body and our nerves to work correctly, carrying messages to and from our brain and spinal cord. There are two categories of bones. Okay, we're going to see that bones can be broken down in lots of different categories according to what they look like or according to where they're found, different things like that. But one very broad breakdown is these two categories. One's our axial skeleton. This is the part represented in blue here. It makes up our skull, vertebral column, and our thorax, just our trunk of our body, if you will, the trunk part there. And then you have the appendicular skeleton. So the axial is right along the axis, the main part of our body. The appendicular is made up of the appendages and also the structures that carry those appendages. So we have the pectoral girdle. That's our scapula and clavicle, our shoulder blade, and our collarbones. You kind of see right here represented our shoulder area, and then also the upper limbs of the arms, all these different bones that make it. And then we have the pelvic girdle, which is comprised of our pelvis. Imagine that. And then our lower limbs, our legs, reaching down to our feet. So axial and appendicular skeleton. Axial is made up primarily of the skull and the vertebrae. Includes our sacrum, this lower part here that we'll learn more about. I told you can break bone down in different ways. Another way you can break it down is based on what the tissue looks like, what it's comprised of. We have compact bone and spongy bone. Now, with compact bone and spongy bone, we'll see in different types of bones, they both exist. Okay, so if we took, this is just a kind of side view of the cranium or the skull, and we have this little inset here. This actually has compact bone and spongy bone. It's actually, what sometimes we'll call the spongy bone sandwich. You have two compact bones on either side, and then the spongy bone here in the middle. Look at compact bone with me. It's very dense, it's very smooth, and it's homogeneous. That means it's same throughout. You can kind of see it. It's what we think about when we think about what a bone most likely looks like. Spongy bone is this middle substance, however. Now, this is not soft like we would think a sponge would be. No, it is spongy because of the way that it looks with these pores, these many open spaces. They're small needle-like little pieces of bone all throughout there. They are all kind of connected, so if we were, to shave away the compact bone here, this wouldn't all just fall out. All right, so it is a pretty strong structure, but not nearly as strong as the compact bone. Together, they add extra strength. Okay, and that's why we'll see in some of these bones, like the cranium, they have this spongy bone sandwich. All right, so compact bone, spongy bone, just as the name implies, is what it looks like. So let's get a little more diverse in our classification of bones. Individual bones can be classified according to their shapes. There's 4 main categories. All right, so stick with me on these. All bones in our body, all 206, fall into one of these categories of bones. First is long bones, and they are longer than they are wide. The easiest example is the femur. Right? That's our upper leg bone. These bones, they have a shaft, and then they have heads on either sides. Contain mostly compact bone. We see that there's a lot of compact bone here, and then there's spongy bone in some of them. All the bones of the limbs, except for the wrist, ankle, and kneecaps, are long bones. So if we're talking about the femur or the lower leg here, the tibia and fibula, or even the bones of the feet, anything in blue here, these are still long bones, even though our pinky is not very long. But the bones themselves are longer than they are wide. All right, so there's the first type. Second type is called short bones, and these are as broad as they are long. So they're almost like little cubes or little squares or small little rectangles. You see the places that they're short bones. There's not a lot. In the wrists, we'll learn more about metacarpals and carpals later, and our ankles, the tarsals and metatarsals, and then also the kneecap or the patella. So we got long bone, short bone. Flat bones are very interesting in that they're relatively thin. They have a flattened shape and are usually curved. And we have that spongy bone sandwich, the 2 thin layers of compact bone surrounding a layer of spongy bone. So the parietal bone of the skull, so the back part here. Also think about your ribs. If you were to take a rib and look at it just individually, not in the big structure that it is, but pull out one of those ribs, just like you've maybe eaten like a beef rib or a pork rib and had that bone left over, it's pretty flat, right? It's a flat structure, and it's curved around usually. Okay, and we'll have some in class if you want to look at those. Not real though, but just diagrams. And then also the sternum. Irregular bones are any bones that don't fit in those other 3 categories. Okay, so if they're not long, they're not short, they're not flat, they're just irregular. You see some examples here. The vertebrae. There, if you looked at our skeleton in class, yeah, those are some weird shaped bones. The hyoid bone, which is a free floating bone actually, in our throat, it holds our larynx open. And then think about the pelvis, think about the hip, how irregular this is shaped with all these different twists and turns.